This episode of The Sportsman's Empire is brought to you by Interstate Batteries. Since 1952, Interstate Batteries has been evoking compassion and a trustworthy spirit into the surrounding communities. Interstate Batteries is a mission-driven company fueled by purpose and guided by their values. If you need help locating a specific battery, stop into your local Interstate Batteries retail store and speak with a battery specialist. They even offer cell phone repairs. Interstate Batteries, outrageously dependable. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Man Therapy. It's me, Dan Johnson. We got Kyle, and we got our very first guest ever. We tricked her into being here because if she knew anything about us, she wouldn't be here.
Yep, we hoodwinked her. Actually, so I was looking for a good voice to help us talk through some relationship stuff, and our guest today came highly recommended through a friend of mine that I respect tremendously in the therapy space. So, welcome today, Leanne Peterson, Houston's leading therapist and coach. She works with couples and individuals and specializes in helping men improve their relationships. So, Leanne, thank you so much for coming. We really are excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and kind of talk about what I've been noticing and working on in the field.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Love
we're
it.
excited about that. Can you start off by telling us just a little bit about your background?
So I've been a therapist over 10 years. I have worked, I started out working a lot with women and slowly started working more with men, brought the couple piece in. So I've kind of been adding a lot of pieces and layering on and really looking at, okay, how do we get people's relationships better? Because we know from studies, right? Like the key to happiness is the quality of our relationships. And so how do we help people improve those relationships so that they're able to get that fulfillment and satisfaction they're really looking for?
Cool.
Awesome.
Follow-up question. What made you decide to focus more on men and men's side of the relationship? That to me, that's kind of unique in therapists and especially female therapists. I thought that was really cool. And it was neat. I was reading your website and reading about you. So what made you be like, oh, I think I want to focus on that?
It just kind of slowly started happening over time where more and more men were coming into my practice. And I was really seeing how impactful the work could be and how necessary it was. And I think especially with the way I view things, it works really well for also how men are viewing things. So it's kind of this fit of, oh, here's something that men are coming in and we're getting really great results. And I'm seeing that what I'm able to do goes really far. And, I say women, I do good work with women too, but women, they have other outlets and other people to talk to. And, so it's kind of like I can add a little something. But with men, a lot of times there aren't a lot of outlets and people to really share with. And so to have that space is just so impactful. And it's really an honor, I feel like, when they're able to open up and say things that they're not able to say other places. So it's a really big impact. And I hope more and more men will start going to therapy because I think it just can be hugely impactful.
Absolutely.
Okay. What are some of the trends that you see currently with men? And I don't know, like maybe if you want to even give a specific age range or a demographic that comes to you looking for some kind of assistance.
So the main trend I'm seeing and what I'm really helping people work with is what I'm finding is men are very successful in the workplace, having these thriving relationships. A lot of them I work with have good friendships, good, they're successful. But what I'm finding is that while men have built a lot of skills in the workplace, they're not bringing those same skills to home. And if they would just bring the skills they're using at work to home, the entire landscape of the couple would be different. And so it seems so obvious to me, like, oh my gosh, all the things that are making you so successful at work, at home would make your home run so much better. And so what I'm seeing is I've noticed a trend where women are really stepping in at home and leading the home. And then I feel like the more women are stepping in, the more men are backing up and still using that, but more at work. And how do we get it so we're co-leading our families and there's more of a balance and input from both parties?
Okay. That makes that makes a lot of sense. Um, Based off of the last 10 years of your experience, like I'm 45. I was raised in more of what I guess people would call a traditional marriage. Like, even though my parents got divorced, I come from families where there was expectations for men to do certain things, and there was a different set of expectations for women to do a certain things when it comes to raising kids, when it comes to the family, all of that, the household, all of that stuff. Are you seeing, or have you noticed a change? And I guess the word that I would use is almost a collision of cultures and changes of the expectations of men and women into like today's society?
100%. Right now, women are looking for friendship out of their partner. To your point, before it was more providing, kind of holding a certain framework. And, divorces right now are being initiated. 2/3 of divorces are being initiated by women. So I really feel like women have come into this space where they don't need the provider as much. They are working, they are running things. They really want that deeper friendship, that deeper relationship. And I think, to your point, there isn't a template for that. And so a lot of it is creating a new template for relationships to follow for both men or women, of how do we come together and do this where there is a role for each party and that each person's needs are being fulfilled, because the needs are different now.
Yeah. Yeah. A follow-up question on that, and I'm just going to use a personal experience here. There's times where my wife will say to me, "You're my best friend." And in my head, I've never really responded a certain way to her, but in my head I go, my best friend is Lance. His name's Lance. Okay. I don't necessarily want you to be my best friend. I want you to be my wife. And for me, I have a different version. Like, there's a difference between a friend and a wife. I feel like a wife is a step above my best friend. How would you suggest I communicate that to? And this is going to sound crazy. This is the guy. I warned you. I'm just the guy in this podcast. But like, I don't want to have sex with my friend Lance. Like, I want to be intimate with my wife, and there's different levels of this that I don't want with my friends, if that makes sense.
So I think really it sounds like probably the difference is just the word. Okay. Right? Like, what you call your wife, she calls best friend. If I were you, what I want to get curious about, just to kind of deepen that relationship, is like, okay, you think I'm your best friend. What are your expectations of me as your best friend? What are you wanting from me as your best friend? Because then it just gives you more information of what is she seeking from me? And then I can add that to, and then you can ask, does that fit in the role of the wife? Because she might say, I want to chat with you all the time. And you're like, that's not really my strength, but like, I want to hear you, right? Like, how do we kind of navigate and put those two pieces together?
Yeah. Kyle, I can see your brain spinning. What do you have to say about that?
I think she's onto something with it. It could just be labeling. I would maybe, like, if both of you got rid of your labels and she didn't say best friend and you didn't say wife, I kind of wonder if you might both describe the same thing.
Yeah.
If you were to say, hey, what's your highest level of relationship? And she'd say, oh my gosh, best friend. And you say wife. Or you could even ask, like, hey, what makes me different from your other closest friends? And then that would also give you some insight about how she sees you differently. Because I would bet she would say similarly that she probably doesn't want to have sex with her friends, but hopefully talk about sex with you every once in a while.
Right. Right. Okay. One of the, we felt it was a necessity to bring on somebody to talk about marriage on this podcast, because I think a lot of men's problems, or I'm not going to say a majority of them, because I don't know. I just know that part of the stress of my life is kids, my business, and then my marriage. Okay. So I don't know if they're all weighted the exact same, but I kind of want to focus a lot on marriage today. And so my first question is to you about this topic is, before we even agree, a man and a woman even agree to get together and become married, what are some things that need to be discussed, thought about, talked about before both parties go, yes?
That's a great question. And I think it's really hard because there's this relationship theory that basically our relationships are our biggest path to growth. And so often we are not aware of the kind of blaring issues with the partner because we're almost numb to them. We get married and then they kind of rear up and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't even like this person. They're triggering everything that I was trying to avoid. And so I think that's step one, is that kind of understanding that you want that initial compatibility. You want to make sure you're in it for the right reasons. And also, I think it's easy to think our relationships are this cheat code to happiness, when really relationships are the next level of our growth. And, there's a common kind of thing like, oh, you need to take time between relationships and heal and grow. And to me, that's kind of like saying, hey, you got injured. You need to reset. You need to recover. But that's not where you build that muscle. The muscle is built in the relationship.
I gotcha. Okay. So, you use the word growth a lot. Is there any how many people do you see in your practice, in a given year that are maybe pre-marriage or are couples that are not technically married?
I see a lot of people that are needing to or working on getting out of the wrong relationship.
Okay. All right.
So your point
so you kind of step in when things are really falling apart. So by the time that it's almost like they could have benefited from some kind of counselor much, much sooner than just the tailspin out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And a lot of times they're coming because... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go.
Oh, they're coming because things are falling apart. But I do think there are warning signs, to your point, before. I think, and Kyle, you have to tell me if you agree. I actually think a warning sign of a relationship that should not be happening is if you need therapy before you're married. And I'm not talking about premarital, learn a template. I'm talking about you're having issues before you're married. I think that is a huge red flag because, right, like I have kids. My marriage did not get hard until I had kids. Like that introduced a whole nother layer of strain and stress. And I know Michelle Obama talks about how she didn't like Barack Obama for 10 years because of the kids. Like kids are this huge weight on a relationship. So if you're already having issues, I really hesitate to think that's go forward. Like if you are dating and you are feeling like we are so misaligned, we need therapy, it's probably not the right fit. And I encourage you to be honest about that versus forcing it through, because it's almost like we'll just push it through to the wedding and the marriage. There's a lot more coming. So if you're already bending under that weight, I'm like, I think we need to stop.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. That's not to say that there aren't exceptions to that. I'm sure there are couples that get together and have counseling and then end up being very successful in the long run. But I do think, generally speaking, what I often see in that situation, and it's one of my least favorite situations to work with in therapy, actually, is basically like kind of my conceptualization in the back of my head. And sometimes I share this with clients. It's like, I don't want to help somebody keep their hand on the stove. It's like, this is burning you and this is not good. This is bad. And usually it's when there's like one of the partners is like a huge giver and has a gigantic heart, and the other person has maybe gone through a lot and is really, really, really has a lot of sharp edges. And the person that has the big heart is just trying to figure out how they can be there for the one that has a lot of sharp edges. And it's like, that there's another thing that I didn't read in a book, but I've been a full-time therapist for about 15 years now, and I've learned that, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about this too, that everyone deserves a healthy, loving, romantic relationship, but I don't think everybody's ready for one.
Mm.
And I think there is some
Yeah.
personal work that people can do. Like if you totally recognize that you are destroying your relationship and you're bringing constant problems to the relationship, I really appreciated that you said that relationships are our biggest path to growth, and I took that to mean that it uncovers a bunch of stuff that you didn't know was there, and you couldn't have anticipated for yourself what it was going to reveal. I've seen that in my own relationships across my lifespan. I'm 42 years old, and I really feel like each relationship I had, I've just like learned so much more about myself, because it's almost like unlocking a new area of the map in a video game that you didn't have access to before. You didn't know what was going to be there, but as soon as you unlock it, now it's yours to contend with. And so I learned a lot of things about myself, good, bad, and ugly. And the ugly things were things that I really had to work on before I could have a successful relationship in the future.
500%. And it speaks to kind of my whole framework of relationships is I call it sacred relationships. And this is, instead of looking at our relationships, which I think we often do, like me and then the person I'm married to, we have to create, and kind of what Dan was saying, a sacred space of the marriage. And the marriage needs to supersede each person. And if our marriage, that sacred place of marriage, is not superseding me and my husband, that's where I see people fail. And when I think of it as like we're both contributing to the well that we're both drinking from. And so if I'm being disrespectful, bringing my worst self home, constantly complaining, not holding myself accountable for behaving a certain way, and all of those things we would naturally do to another person because you're with this person all the time. So if this was just about me and my husband, it would be really easy for things to fall apart. Because he does things that bug me and hurt my feelings. But when it's about, I have committed to this relationship, and now I need to be better for this relationship. And to your point, Kyle, I have to do my own work constantly so that I can show up as who I need to be to keep that space clear. And I tell my clients, I say, y'all, you need a Brita filter. My unfiltered thoughts, our unfiltered thoughts are like lead in the water, and you do not serve that to your partner. You need to do your own work to clear that so that when what water you're pouring and serving them is cleaner and it's cleaned up and it's, hey, I'm owning this and this is how I feel. And can we talk about this versus you're lazy and selfish and I hate you. Like that's
Right.
That's going to poison the relationship.
Right.
Yeah. I like that. So when it comes, you've dropped the word growth a lot in this podcast already. When I hear the word growth, I also kind of connect that to change. Okay. And people are just not the same. Like I am not the same version at 45 that I am at 20. Okay. Completely different person in that time frame. And so when people get married and there's this growth that happens, there's also that change. But when an individual changes, then the dynamic of the marriage also changes. What do you see in those types of instances where an individual changes? Well, the other person changes as well. And now we have a conflict that was there that was previously never there before because everybody changes in certain ways. Like, what do you see? How do you handle that?
Well, again, that's why I think I want men to be doing the work too, because what I'm seeing is women are doing a lot of work, changing a lot. And then there's this real imbalance of just the words used, the skill set, the expectations. There's this huge divide forming. And it feels like, as Terry Real says, a lot of times individual therapy becomes divorce therapy because you're kind of empowering one person up here and then another person is here. And then that chasm becomes too big to be compatible anymore.
Gotcha. and this is kind of like a side question of like where your professionalism or like where your profession and your real life overlap. Is it possible for someone like in your shoes to be a marriage counselor or to be a marriage counselor who is not married? Is that even a possibility?
I think so. I think it's because a lot of it is about the helping someone kind of develop those skills and the framework. And I think you can do that. I do think my own marriage has given me a level of understanding and empathy to your point of my own growth and change.
Mm-hmm.
I do bring more. I'm like a cast iron pan at this point, very well seasoned. I'm like, I do have a lot of that seasoning, and it's helped me form my own kind of understandings or deeper understandings. But I helped couples before I was married too. So it's like, I do think, just like I almost think I was sometimes a better parent coach before I was a parent.
I gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about men specifically for a second. Are there things like it's hard for me. I know there's a wide variety of men in this world, and all men are different. But are there things that men are doing maybe subconsciously? Like I look at myself. Like in that evolutionary chart, you'll see a monkey and then it grows up to the Neanderthal and then it grows up into a man. There's days where I feel like I'm that Neanderthal type guy in the thing. Are there things that men are doing wrong, maybe subconsciously, that have huge impacts in their relationships?
Yes. And I don't blame men. I think there's a lot of like blaming men and a lot of kind of this is weaponized incompetence and this is like manipulative and like, are there those relationships? Of course, like, but we're not talking about those. I'm like, in general, I just do not believe that. Anyone would do that. Like, if you're not responsible for certain things, I'm not just going to be like, hey, this is your job, but I noticed that it needed something, so I'm going to help. Like, it's very easy to not activate when it's not on your list. And so I think first for men and women, we have to drop this like kind of us against them, this fight, this like, this is malicious. I find that to be probably the most toxic thing happening now because I just don't. When I look at the men I work with, when I look at my husband, I'm not like, you are inherently a mean, bad person who's trying to punish me or doesn't like me. It's like our systems have created an imbalance that is actually not working for either of us because now I'm feeling resentful and you're thinking things are okay and they're not okay. Like we got to even out our system. And so my biggest thing that I want all the men I work with and all men to do is take back some of the thinking of the family. Like, if there's one thing that I think men are doing the most that's sabotaging them is pulling their energy out of the family, is stepping back, is being a follower, not a leader. I see a lot of women leading households right now. And I don't love it because I think we need to find that balance. And it used to be that men were leading the household, and now I feel like women are leading the household. And I don't know if we know what it looks like to actually be co-leading our families. And so the one thing I encourage men to do is, and I mean, imagine this. I want men to take 1 hour a week to think about the family. Like they would a business problem. Like they would an issue outside the family. Just think about your family for 1 hour strategically. Hey, I noticed that the mornings feel really chaotic. What do we need to do? What could be different? Hey, my wife's always feeling really stressed and worried. And if we're only handling it in the moment, it's easy to pass it by and not come up with the solution. But what if men were just sitting and thinking about how could that be different? And then they came to their partner with a thoughtful, hey, I've noticed this. This is what I'm thinking. I think it would make a huge change of just, and again, energetically and mentally bringing men back into that leadership role. And as I spoke about, like they would do it in business.
Yeah, I gotcha. So with that said, then, do you feel that men, like are you talking about equal leadership in the house, or do you feel that men should be the leaders of the house?
I think I tend to think more it could be equal, just different.
Okay. All right. Hey, Kyle, do you have any questions for Leanne?
Yeah. So, I think I look at it kind of behaviorally, not necessarily, men versus women, because I think the dynamic can happen either way. A dynamic that I hate to see is when one person really wants to contribute, but the other person won't ever take their lead. A thing that I've seen often when, I've seen a lot of really good relationships that this isn't the case, but in relationships that aren't working very well, I feel like there's often this dynamic that it's not who's the most right, it's who's the most stubborn, and whoever's the most stubborn wins. Because it doesn't matter how insightful one partner is, doesn't matter how much they care and how much they want to try. If they have a really stubborn partner, then the stubborn one tends to win. And I'm curious if you've seen that dynamic. And again, it could be either partner could be the stubborn one, either partner could be the one that's trying. I know this is a little different dynamic than you were talking about, but have you seen that dynamic where it's like one person's like, geez, I'm really trying, and like no matter what I do, it's not helping. No matter what I do, it's not working. I put a lot of thought into this. I put a lot of effort into this. I see how things could be better. I plead with my partner. This could be better. I have great ideas for how to do this. I'm willing to do all this work, and my partner just will not come with me. Do you ever see that in relationships? And if so, then how do you guide? And also, I know we're just like barraging you with questions and putting you on the spot. So thanks for being such a good sport with all this.
Of course. I love it. Yes, I do see that dynamic. And I think how I was trained in relationship therapy and how I really love it, it's very empowering to me, is to your point, it could be either gender. There's usually a partner who has more power and a partner who has less power. And you got to figure out how to get that so that partner with less power has more power. And that's when relationships will change, especially when there's toxic patterns happening. You cannot change a toxic pattern without changing that power differential.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't let the stubborn person win. You got to find your leverage. And so if, the partner's really stubborn and things aren't moving, it's like, okay, what do we need to do to get this back in balance? Because to your point, it's the phrase I love the best. It's not who's right or wrong. It's workability. And I think we all, again, when we step back, we have to not look at battling each other, not look at who's right or who's wrong. It's like, is it working? And here's my true belief. It's like a Rubik's Cube. For things to be in actual alignment, every partner has to be winning. It's like Stephen Covey, win-win or no deal. So everyone has to be winning. And if we have a solution where one person's winning and one person's losing, or let's say it's a family of 5, everyone's happy, but the dad isn't happy, or everyone's happy, but the mom isn't happy, the problem's not solved. That's not good enough. We have to go back until everyone is winning. And I think, again, that's part of that, seeing it more as a sacred relationship. What we're seeking is the solved equation of everyone's okay. And if my equation means that I'm okay and my husband's not okay, it's not okay. And we can't stop there. And to your point, I see a lot of couples stopping there, and it's working fine enough. I'm winning. The stubborn person's winning, so it's working.
Yeah.
You use the term toxic behaviors. What are some examples of toxic behaviors that people should, that married couples should be good at identifying?
I think all relationships, and this goes back to red flags. I mean, definitely the red flags. And again, another therapist, I'm saying this from another therapist, but they had talked about kind of what defines an abuse in a relationship. So defensiveness and domination, those are big things we want to be looking for in ourselves and others. Am I taking over? Am I getting defensive to shut the other person down? Those are toxic patterns in our relationships. Another therapist says all criticism is abuse. And I think that's an interesting thought. Like every time we're criticizing our partner, we're actually being abusive toward them. So those are definitely things. From the Gottmans, we look at, turning away from our partners, stonewalling. I think that to me is probably the most hurtful thing in a relationship, when one partner just shuts down. And I'm not talking about, hey, I need a minute to like think. I think that's great. We all kind of need some time to regroup. That's different than punishing through silence and shutting down. And again, Kyle, to your point, that's that ultimate stubbornness where if it doesn't go my way, I'm just totally shutting down. And that's really harmful for relationships. But, you know, in the little things of when we're talking, there's 3 things you can do. Turning towards, hey, I want to go here on vacation. Turning towards, that'd be great. Let's look at the calendar. Or yeah, we should look at that. Turning away from, you know, I hate that place. Or turning against, you know, I hate that place. I don't want to go there. And that's going to ding you. And then turning away from, hey, I want to go to this place on vacation. Did you feed the dog? Right. Like these are bids that our partners are trying for connection. And we have to be paying attention to, the assignment is connection. The purpose is connection. Am I checking that box, or am I kind of just sticking to an agenda?
Okay. This is where I think maybe a lot of men fail, and I know that I do too. But for the greater good of the relationship or the marriage, I personally think sometimes you got to take the loss. You got to take the L. I think a lot of times I don't want to lose. I want to be right all the time. I want to be the one who guides the family all the time. I want to do all of this. How important, or how would you suggest a strategy where you know that you need to just take the loss, give in, and let the other person, and I hate to say the word win, or get their way, or whatever terminology you want to lose, so that they feel better, which when they feel better, it turns the relationship into so basically for the greater good?
That's such a good question. And I have laughed at myself where I'm like, I would rather my husband fail and be right than him succeed and I be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like my dark thoughts are like,
yep.
I hope that this doesn't go right because I told you shouldn't do that. Or right? Like it's so dark. But we have to recognize, first off, that's our ego.
Mm-hmm.
That is 100% our ego. And if we let our ego run our relationships, we've already lost. We have already lost. Like our egos are there, but we cannot let them run our relationships. And so I think, to me, the bigger thing is, what's my purpose? Right? Because in that situation with my husband, is my purpose to be right? Because that'd be the win. Or is my purpose to support my partner? Then I would be losing. If he's failing so I can win, I'm actually losing the bigger game. Yeah, I won the smaller game, but I lost the bigger game.
Yeah. It's almost like there needs to be a flip, right? Where you need to, like, you're thinking more, you need to expand your thought process to more long-term than to short-term wins and gains, and more long-term growth of the relationship. Is that, am I 500%?
And
okay.
These are the things that build those long-term gains, right? It's this, Maya Angelou says, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay. Kind of getting back into the chronological marriage. All right. What are some specific examples you see? You know, like, I look back at my life now as a father of 3. I've been married for 13 years now. I look back on that year or so. Me and my wife got married later, like early in our 30s. So we went right into having kids. But there was a time there where we had our problems. But I look back at those problems now and I just laugh out loud because they're so stupid compared to the problems that we have today. What are some hurdles that couples face in that? And I know this is a big range, but like from the time kids are born to the time kids are out of the house type of relationship struggles that you deal with often.
Well, right now, and y'all can weigh in because, you see it too, but right now I feel like we've really just made kids the center of everything. I mean,
Yep.
studies show dads are way more involved with the kids than they've ever been. Studies also show that moms now spend more time with their kids than stay-at-home moms before, like of other generations. Like we are so focused on our kids and spending time with our kids. And I love that. I have 3 kids. I am with them a lot. But we have to figure out, and however this works in each marriage, how do we keep the relationship in the center, the husband and wife relationship in the center, not the kids? Because again, I just see this big flip where dads now are way more present with their kids, way more involved. But that also sometimes makes their wives feel like they're not interested in them. You know, it's like, I don't have time to help with this stuff, but I have time to coach the t-ball. I have time to coach the soccer. I have time to be at all the games. But now I really don't have time for my wife because I'm busy with work and the kids stuff. And it's like, I'm not saying any of that's bad, but I'm saying like we can't neglect the relationship. And I see women prioritizing kids' happiness and satisfaction over the family's happiness and satisfaction, or their spouse's happiness and satisfaction, overspending on events and parties, you know, putting that stress of trying to keep up with kid stuff so that they're not able to be present in the family and a happy partner. Because it's like, well, I got to do all this stuff for the kids. It's like, whoa. We got to like back it up and feed the parents first, make sure they're good. And then how do we then as a couple feed our kids? Because right now it's almost like they're getting $20 from mom and $20 from dad. We're both paying them.
How do you balance that?
I think just first a commitment. It's changing the focus and committing to, okay, we need to be the united front. Again, this is that co-leadership. We need to be a co-leader. And I see a lot of families running without a vision, right? Like, what is our vision for our families? I feel like a lot I'm seeing is just reactive to the moment and almost pinging more off other people than off of families' core values and core vision. And so we have to be super intentional. And so I think step one is just coming together like, how do we see this? How do we imagine that this would be? It almost is such a helpful thing for me. Sometimes I'm like, what if in a visual, like, what is a healthy family? How is that running? And I can almost compare my life to my visual, and often it's different. But we're not even pausing to think of that. We're just like, well, this is what people are doing. So this is what my family is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that a problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just driving around without an address in your GPS. Like, it's fun at first, but now you just don't even know how to get back to where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
What would you say would be first steps to a couple getting back on the same page? What advice would you give to a couple who they're in it for the long run? They both want to be together forever. They're not even considering divorce, nothing like that. It's just, there's just this big divide, big chasm. They're both good people. Maybe neither one of them's inherently toxic or anything like that. It's just, they are not on the same page, and they would both like to be, but maybe they have different visions. What's your guidance to start coming together and getting on the same page? Because I hear you that's really important. Make the relationship primary. Our lives are so busy that, it's rare to get a date night and things like that. So yeah, what do you think kind of first steps are? What framework would you use to help people like start to come back together?
Pain points. Like, look at each other's pain points. That's going to be your clue for where you could be the most impactful as a partner. I'll give an example from my life. So my husband and I were taking the kids to school every day. We live like where they can ride their bikes, so we'd walk and ride. And again, the image actually looked like what I pictured. It looked lovely. This family doing walks every morning. I left those walks so annoyed at my husband, because he wouldn't be as chatty as I wanted. He was thinking about, he's a soccer coach, so he was thinking about soccer strategy. He's kind of getting his day set, thinking about that. So I'd always leave these walks just so annoyed, not having gotten what I wanted, that I'm rushed for the morning. I would be annoyed because I'd be up and he'd be laying in bed. I was like, ah. So that, if we look at our biggest point of the day, that was my point was the morning. And although it looked like we were supporting and being with each other, it was actually negatively impacting the relationship because I was leaving feeling annoyed. Finally, I was like, you know what? This is not working for me. I said, can you please take the older kids to school? I'll stay home with the youngest who's in preschool. Can we try that? It has changed my marriage. I am so appreciative of him. I can lay in bed a little longer now. He's handling the bigger kid. He appreciates it because he can get home faster because he's riding his bike and not walking and having to chat with me in the morning. Like, oh my gosh, we were the solution to the problem, and just each of our pain points alerted us to the problem. And it was like, let's experiment and just see, would this make it better? And that's what I encourage for all partners. Like, it's like, where can you be of service without actually taxing yourself? Like, there's a lot of wins that we can have that's just like, oh, this isn't actually hard for me. Him in the morning, it's not hard for him to bike to school. So he's happy to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can look at your pain points and make adjustments, and you can also look at your partner's pain points and figure out what adjustments you can make. And in both of those scenarios, it's really about what you can do and not expecting something else from your partner. Or am I off base there?
It's about what you need and how they can help you meet that need. If we look at our relationships like that, like that power hour I talk about, where the partner just sits and thinks about something. I always say the prompt for that thing is asking your partner, where are you the most stressed? Because usually where we're the most stressed is where we're the most ready to hand something off, right? Like if I love setting the table. And when my brother-in-law came to the family, he would want to help out and he'd set the table, and it really upset me because I'm like, that's my thing. That's not helping me. That's upsetting me because it's my thing. And what I find a lot of times in relationships is we're trying to take the thing someone wants off their plate and then get mad that they don't want our help. And so it's like, let's start with, where are you struggling? That's the question I want every partner to ask their other partner. Where are you struggling? And let's start there. And how can I support you in that? How can we support you? The house is always a mess and you feel like you can never get ahead on it. Do you want me to help? Should the whole family help on Sundays clean up the house? Or would you like me to take the kids to the park so you have an hour to pick up? Do we need to talk about, do we need a cleaner to come in and help? Like, what do we need to support you? Oh my gosh, I feel like that would go so far with so many couples. Like, you see my struggle and you're willing to be with me in it. And the crazy thing is sometimes we don't even need the other person to do anything. Just being seen and being held in that space. And there's been times where my husband's like, I know this is a struggle. I know this is hard. And I've said, like, there's actually not a solution right now, but just you saying that feels like it's filling a part of me because I'm being seen in this and I don't feel alone in it. And I'm not ashamed that I can't handle this as well as I want to. Like, so, you know, it's really just, I think we're afraid of each other in general in this society. We're afraid of pain and discomfort, and we're always trying to move out of it. And really the healing comes when we can just go into it and just hit that pressure point and be like, linger there a minute and like, what do we need?
What happens when that pain point? See, I am at fault, the guy that I see a problem, I want to fix it. All right, you're stressed, I want to fix that problem. Sometimes that can't happen, especially, and I'm just going to use an example from my own life. One of my wife's biggest pain points is her job. I can't do anything about that other than just basically lend her an ear. What guidance would you give to someone whose pain point is something that the spouse can't deal with or can't control?
Yeah. That's a great example. Is there anything we can help you do around that? Like, I know your job is really hard. Is there anything I can do that makes something else better, right? Like, what do you need to kind of, that's a heavy burden that we can't change. Is there anything else I can do around that? And then to your point, it's just kind of lending them an ear and being there in it with them.
Yeah. Okay. And this kind of sidesteps into, I'm an 80s baby. I was raised with tough tough love. Okay. Is there ever a time where, let's say your partner has a pain point and you're trying to help them address that in a way that is kind and courteous and all this stuff. And then there comes to a point where maybe you just don't have the energy to deal with it that day. Is there ever a benefit to just telling a person or your partner, like, tough shit, get over it type of mentality?
No, not that.
Okay.
I would never recommend those words. But
Okay.
yes, in that there is, so an example from when I first started dating my husband, I come from a house where we yell. My sister and I yell at each other all the time. It's like, it was just a thing. Like, we were just two girls, and when we got angry, we'd yell, and then we'd get on with it. And I remember the first time I got frustrated, I was dating my husband, and I got frustrated with him, and I started yelling. And he just calmly was like, "You will not yell at me. I will leave." I have never yelled at him. Like, that was an example of like a really loving, helpful boundary. It wasn't, he didn't get mad, defensive at me. He wasn't like even trying to change me. He's like, "We are not doing that. This is not happening." And it reset me. It literally reset me. And I think that's an example too of men being in that co-leader position, putting that boundary down. Like, men can hold these boundaries with love and like a little firmer of like, hey, and women can do this too, but I see men almost not putting some of these boundaries of, we're not going to go there. We're not going to do this. Like, let's come back. Let's reset. And so I think there are times a partner needs to put their foot down and say, like, we can't do this. Like, you got to figure your job out. And whether that's going to a therapist to talk about, your relationship with your job, whether that's you finding a new job, like, I hear you and I get it, but like, we can't live in this.
Yeah. As we get on into a marriage, there's things that are always triggers for, and there's two specifically that come up, and one is money. Like, if you talk with any therapist or any research that I've done on marriage counseling, it seems like two of the biggest ones are money and sex. Okay. Let's start off with money. What do you see about finances and how that should be managed in a household that benefits all parties?
I think of this with money, parenting, relationships, everything. Mm-hmm. You need a third party. That is my true belief. Like, I'll talk about, my example will be with babies, like with sleep training, with everything, with parenting. I'm like, who are we following? Who do we agree as a couple is the expert that we want to guide us through this? And I think that can be really helpful. Like, my husband and I found a program. We both thought this sounds good. So then she became kind of our person. We weren't fighting each other. We don't know. I've never had a baby before. I don't know the best way. So let's get on the same page so that we can go refer to her. And I actually think with finances, every couple needs that. Whether you both love Dave Ramsey, you both love this other person, this book, really, like, who are we centering around? Because otherwise it becomes a fight of my beliefs and your beliefs. And we don't even have a shared set of beliefs around money. So if I believe we have to save every penny and retire early, and you believe that everything that comes in we spend, how are we going to find peace? So I think and this is actually a good thing to talk about before we get married. Can we find a shared belief system around money? We have a financial advisor, because I said to my husband, I was like, if you lose all of our money on a bad investment, I will not be able to forgive you. Like, I know me, I can't recover from that. But if Bob loses all our money, we both hate Bob. We both agreed that Bob was our guy. And if Bob now loses our money, we are united against Bob. If we have we were just talking about moving. I emailed Bob. I'm like, we want to talk this through. Like, so then we almost have this third party that we're agreeing, and we might disagree with Bob, but we have another perspective and someone we're both kind of listening to as the expert. And I think too many couples, and I see this all the time, are just living in how their parents lived. And they haven't formed a shared financial vision. They don't have shared buy-in, and they don't have shared guidance. And so I think every couple, in a healthy relationship, I want to be able to say, who's your money person? And they have a person that they're both following on Instagram. They're both following on Facebook. They're both reading. They're both like, this is who we're learning from.
Kind of a devil's advocate question here. Isn't that in a way deflecting responsibility onto somebody else?
It's going to the same school. Like you are still doing your own decisions, but like, what book are we reading from? Because if we're reading different books, we're going to have different opinions. And again, I do find that different vision is what really is sinking the ship when it comes to finances.
Gotcha. Kyle, any questions?
Yeah, I like that. So then who's your third person for sex?
Great transition.
Yeah, let's dive into that. No, I'm joking, but no, I like that because that goes back to my my experience with clients with the stubbornness thing, that both people have their own vision and it's just competing instead of working together, and then they're both super frustrated. So if they could find one path that they can both walk, that would be way better.
And exactly to your point, what Gottman says, 95% are unwinnable fights. Because to your point, both people are stubborn. There are things you will never change my mind on. Like, it's just how I believe. And so to your point, the way we work around that is a bit of humility too, of like, yeah, I don't have all the answers. And that is the antidote to stubbornness, humility. I actually don't know everything. I think I know. I think I know the best way for this. Maybe I don't. Let's find out a solution that works for both of us, or a guide that works for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's money. Okay. That's number one. Number two, sex, passion, intimacy, whatever you want to say. And I'll tell you this from experience, kids, and like, with all due respect, are the biggest cock blockers I've ever met. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about how, and usually it's the men, right? The men are the ones that don't need the thing to get the engine started. Talk to us about what your experience is and what you're seeing in that realm.
I think it's really interesting because it's almost like there's this belief that if the relationship is going well, then your sex life is going well, right? There's kind of this like in relationship therapy, something we fix the relationship, we fix the sex life. And someone pointed this out, and I've noticed it's very true. They're actually kind of separate things. And you can and the relationship will fall apart. It will impact your sex life. Stresses will happen. It will impact your sex life. Like that's true. But actually fixing those things will not then fix your sex life. It's almost a separate pillar that you have to be working on. And so I think to your point, kids, that'll wreck that pillar. But then as the kids get bigger and things are smoothing out, it just won't actually self-correct. You have to work as a couple intentionally on this pillar. And I think that kind of gets ignored because it's like, okay, we'll fix all the other things. But it's like really simultaneously. And after a fight, even for women especially, but men too, physically, you'll kind of not trust someone if someone hurt your feelings. There's actually a physical response to that. And we're so busy verbally repairing. I'd see definitely not enough physical repair. Long hugs, back rub, like just like literally rubbing someone's back. Like there always should be a physical component to a repair so that we're keeping that pillar intact.
Gotcha. What do you see? Talk to us about just like, because I think in a relationship, if I asked men what, like for men and women, men are going to put a higher weight on intimacy and physical touch over talking and that kind, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. What is your experience? How do you meet in the middle in that category?
One thing I'm actually seeing, and Kyle, I don't know if you're seeing this, but it's actually a lot of my female clients are actually wanting more intimacy. And what it seems like has happened is a lot of men have kind of like given up or aren't doing that or are watching porn, doing other sources. And it's like, it's kind of creating this imbalance I see it both sides. I see men who want more sex, but I'm also seeing women and men who are just not pursuing it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't see that as much. I do know that that's a thing. Being a male therapist, I see disproportionately more men. I think men tend to feel more comfortable talking to other men. What I tend to hear is that the man wants that intimacy and that sexual connection, and that's kind of how he experiences safety. That's how he feels close. The main theme that I hear over and over and over again is basically she needs everything to be perfect in order to feel good enough to have sex, and nothing's ever perfect, so we don't ever have sex. That's the overwhelming theme that I hear. What are your thoughts on that?
My guess is probably, again, it's like probably a deflection. Like there's probably something that could be done that's a lot more efficient than all of the things. I know women use that. Like, well, the house is a mess. It's almost become like a cover in my mind. Like, well, the house is a mess and you're not helping here and there. And again, it's almost like we're all in this bad habit of like clumping these things as similar. And to me, I'd really push back on like, okay, he's not being helpful. They're like, what's going on physically? What physical needs not being met? Because women are really right now deflecting to, well, if you didn't do the dishes and if you can do the dishes and the women still aren't going to want sex because it's like this pillar has not been tended to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you that it likely goes back to needing to make the relationship primary again. I think it's really common for a couple to be in love. Everything's great. Then they have kids and the focus become the kids, and the parents kind of they just drift apart. They don't know each other very well anymore. Then the kids leave and then they're just left with each other, and they're two strangers living in a house practically. So what amount of connection on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Like I'm thinking, like I know my wife is in a much better mood, and I am too. I love if we can go on date nights and be away from the kids for a little while, or anytime that we're away from the kids, she is so much less stressed than when the kids are around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm curious what your experience is with how much time is reasonable for a married couple to spend one-on-one without the kids.
I think the question comes out almost to like quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, I don't know if Rachel Hollis was big on like weekly date nights. This is the solution. And then they got divorced. I'm like, how'd those weekly date nights go? Like,
right?
I don't know if that's really the cure. You made it sounded really great. Yeah. To me, what I find, and this might be different for you guys to weigh in, I actually think relationships get boring and we don't say that enough. Like, I don't want to just go out to dinner with my husband. I talk to him all the time. I love him. We have great conversation. The kids go to bed. We watch shows. Like, what we need in relationships is more novelty, more different things, more like, hey, let's do something new, because what that does is it creates that dopamine, that excitement. We got to kind of wake up our brains together, because and here's the thing, when you're dating, your relationship is an escape. It's an escape from your work. It's an escape from your home. It's an escape from your family. It's something completely new and fun. When we're married, it is your life. Like it's not the escape anymore. So I always encourage couples, find a way to escape together. Find a way to like have fun together, to do new things together. This might be just me. I don't love a dinner date. Cause again, like, okay, it's nice, but oh my gosh, going to a new concert, checking out a new thing, doing something I haven't done that I wouldn't do on my own, that I would do with my partner, really increases that like appreciation and that energy between us of fun and excitement.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that a lot. I love that insight that when you're dating, your relationship is an escape. That it feels so special. It feels so exciting. And then once you're married, the relationship just is your life. And so then how to cultivate some excitement there. And it might not be the regular dinner dates that you've done, every other week for the past 8 years. Might have to be something different. Okay, that makes
Exactly.
sense. I like that.
All right. We talked about the pillar of finance. We talked about the pillar of sex. Are there any other pillars that we need to take a look at when evaluating our marriages and relationships?
It's a great question. Again, for both parties, just the connection. Like, how connected are we feeling? Do I feel like you have my back? And we really need to be evaluating within ourselves. Am I showing, and this is a question that I grapple with, or that really like kind of works on my brain and my being, like, am I being the partner that I would expect me to be? And I think that's a question we're not asking ourselves enough. Like, if I were married to me, if I were a man married to me, is this good enough? And that's not a judgy or a mean question. It's just like a getting honest question, an accountability question. And those things, often it's when I ask myself that question, I came up with this question just randomly one day. And I'm like, wow, like, this is the only wife my husband gets. Am I filling that role in the way that if I were married, I would want that role to be filled? And this doesn't mean becoming a trad wife and performing this whole like thing, but it's little things. I'm like, when he comes in the door, am I greeting him with the amount of love and like care that I would want someone I love to be greeted with? Because I get busy and the kids are around. So it's like just those little things. Am I like paying attention? Am I asking about his day enough? Like those things kind of help me to look at where am I at in my own expectations of myself.
I will say this, as a man who is in a very has a chaotic life with all 3 kids and all different things. And this, you might not hear men say this a lot, but it is very little things that absolutely matter a whole bunch. Like exactly what you said. It's just little signs of respect like that go miles. And for me personally, in my book. And so, I don't know. It's what happens when maybe a man or a woman, this is the man podcast. Let's say I have been a piece of shit husband to my wife, and maybe it's not in the like abusive way, but just like I have put almost everything else in my life ahead of my wife, and my wife now resents me for that. How do I go back and try to fix that burnt down bridge in order to get back to a very healthy relationship, or at least get the first nail put into the wood?
I think that is the first nail, like being able to be humble and aware enough to say, I have been a bad spouse is like, again, such an ego blow, but that is transformational. And then to allow that to fuel your next step. Not, again, to our point, thinking into that pain. Like, wow, I'm going to take accountability for what I've done. I have not shown up as who I needed to show up as in this marriage. And I have not been who I needed to be in this marriage. And then getting real about, again, kind of looking at what are the things that I need to do. And to your point about the little things, it's consistency. We can't trust something that's inconsistent. If the bridge works 10 times, but on the 11th time falls, I don't trust that bridge. It has to be 10 out of 10 times that bridge is going to hold. And so if you're trying to rebuild, be very careful, because you only want to commit to something that you can follow through on. Don't make big promises. It's like almost more dangerous to make big promises and big changes than little steps that you can hold and that they can rely on you on. And women really want a reliable, consistent partner. And so the more you can be reliable and consistent. And that's another thing to that point of when you tell your spouse you're going to do something and don't do it, that actually erodes the trust. Right? When men say, oh yeah, I'll mow the lawn, and they don't mow it, or just don't say it. If you can't do it, just say, I don't know when I can get to it. Don't say I'll do it to push someone off, because you're then adding on this unintended layer of distrust.
Yeah. What about the flip side to that? When you feel let's say I've sat down and I've evaluated myself and I'm trying to check boxes and going, okay, well, I could do this better, or hey, I mean, you know what? I'm actually really I'm doing good at this. Like, how do you break the bad news to your partner that they are not holding up their end of the bargain?
So with our egos, you want to avoid a head-on blow, right? Like
Right.
there's only combustion can happen when you're like head to head. And I remember in driver's ed, and I've always remembered this, it's you don't want to do a head-on collision. You always want to hit things with a glancing blow. So if you're going to hit a car head-on or a tree sideways, go for the tree. That's how we want to look at our relationships and how to deal with an ego. You don't want to hit it head on. So to me, you can, and then defensiveness is often the result of that, or like deflation. I'm terrible. You're right. I suck. Well, that's not helpful. I need you to ready to change. Or no, well, you're bad. So but like, where else are we going to go? Like our ego is going to react. And so to me, a really good work around of having that conversation with either partner is kind of asking a secondary question of, hey, like when our kids, when they're married, what do you expect for them? What would you want for them? And then is our marriage adding up to that? Where am I not there? Where are you not there? Like it's almost looking at it outside of yourself can give a clearer view than so close. It's really hard to have those discussions so close, but I do think we should be kind of looking out a little bit and using that to evaluate.
I gotcha. Okay. That's some great insight. We've been at this for about an hour now. So, on our wind down here, Kyle, do you have any final questions for Leanne today?
Yeah. Dan, you asked earlier about other pillars. Another pillar that I was keeping in mind is parenting. How to get on the same page with parenting. It's, disagreements are common. Like it's so funny when you date and when you first start out, you basically just assume that you're always going to like be on the same page with everything. And then real life happens and it's like, oh, I don't want my kids on electronics all the time, but my partner's like fine with using electronics as a babysitter, like things like that. What's your guidance to folks that like have very different, like they're really struggling to get on the same page with parenting? And maybe you already answered it with finding an outside source that you both agree on. I'm not sure, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So what are your thoughts about getting on the same page with parenting? I think especially after it's already gone awry. So, it's one thing to say like, okay, we're starting this relationship and we're going to have kids. So like, yeah, we're going to both pull in the same direction. Wonderful. But what if you're already 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years deep into parenting and you have very different views?
That's such a great question. And again, it starts with that foundational piece we talked about, which is us. Like, are we okay? What do we need? Because I actually think that living a principle-based life is the fastest way to destroy your life. And everyone talks about you have to have principles. I've seen principles sink so many ships. Out of principle, there can't be electronics. Out of principle, our kids have to do this. Out of principle. And a lot of times men, when they're so stuck in principle, they then can't see, again, people crumbling. Like I say, we want to be intentional, not principled. So with parenting, number one is like, yeah, we have these principles, but what's working for the family? If I'm working a lot and then just tell my partner the kids shouldn't be on screens, but they're drowning in chaos, that's not actually like a helpful thing. So the thing is like when we're putting ourselves in the center and us being okay, let's start there. And then what do we need to do so that the kids are okay, but that we're not just kind of like labeling certain things good or bad or right or wrong. We're actually looking at the needs of the whole family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'd be like problem solving. So it's almost like, like let's say that I was the one working a lot and my wife was with the kids a lot. And, I'm saying, hey, in principle, it'd be best to not let them be on electronics a lot. And she'd go, yeah, that's cool. And I agree with you, but holy shit. Like life is really, really rough here. when you're not here. And so, yeah, they do end up being on electronics more often. And I don't like it either. And I also kind of don't feel like there's much I can do about it. So then, so in that situation, it's less about, it's like, yes, your principal's right. And also, so what? What's really workable? Let's do some more problem solving around this. Yeah. Okay.
That is exactly it. Most of the things that I look at life and this is just how my brain works. But to me, most issues are a system issue, not a person issue. Because do we change a little bit? Yes. But like our core is kind of us. So what works? And so in that situation, exactly, it's problem solving. Like with my son, he needs to be active. Do we put him in after school? Like, is that the solution? Like, okay, you don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the bandwidth. Is there a program he could do where he's not on the screen? Like, what is the solution and the structure we need versus just putting more on one partner?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to take the iPad away or the Nintendo away, well, then what are you going to replace it with? Because that's a big thing that I talk about with clients as well, that if they're doing a thing because it works as best they can. And the one thing you don't want to do is just take that away from them, because then they're going like, okay, cool, that's gone, but I still don't know what to do. So you don't want to take something, if you're going to take something, hand them the replacement.
That. And then like, how are you going to step in with that? Right? Like, cause it's so easy as a partner who's not in charge to just make a decree. We should eat healthier. Go forth and eat healthier. The kids shouldn't be on screens. Go forth. It's like, how am I contributing to the solution? Right? So it's like, there was this one story and this man was like a cook and he was like really healthy cook. And then his kids were eating fast food all the time. And he was like to his wife, like, what the heck? Why aren't you feeding our kids better? I'm a chef. She's like, you're the chef and you're not here. So yeah, they're going to eat fast food. So then the solution became before he left for work, he made a healthy lunch and then they could eat that for dinner. So it's like both parties. If you have a problem, you better be ready to be part of the solution. If you're just issuing decrees, it's not going to land well, because then it just lands as criticism. Like, you think I'm not doing a good enough job and I don't even have the bandwidth to do a better job. So now I just feel annoyed at you.
Yeah. Sounds like the key is a little extra work.
Yep.
In order to fix a problem or find a solution, right? You gotta be willing to put in the work, and that's a two-way street. So, Leanne, as we shut it down here, do you have any final thoughts or recommendations for people who might be struggling in a relationship, or any topics that you want to expand on before we shut it down today?
I think all of us have to be willing at some point to let go of the relationship we had in our head and really accept the relationship we have. And I think that's probably the hardest part of marriage. I think my guess is all of us at some point or another have to mourn the loss of what we thought it would be so that we can then accept and grow what it is. And I think that's a huge piece of this process, is acceptance. And then the other piece I'll say, though, is we also have to let go of just the vision of being in the relationship. It's almost like we have to let go of that monkey bar so we can reach for the one of a healthy relationship. And that's what I always tell people. We really want a healthy relationship. And so can we let go of this to get to the next better relationship?
That's really good. I like that. I like that, because I think once you do that and you're able to accept that, then it not only becomes clear, but then you're not living up to expectations anymore. You're kind of just living your best life at that point.
Yeah. And like we talked about,
cool.
Then you're designing the systems around the people you are,
Right.
and the person you married, not the fantasy of the person you are and the fantasy of the person you married.
Absolutely.
And parenthood will bring that up. Like, my fantasy self, there were no screens and we were at the park all the time. Well, that's not the kids I had, or that's not the life I have. Can I let that go so that I can find what actually works and serves all of us with who we are, and the freedom we gain and our whole families gain when we can just let go of the fantasy and build our life around the reality? Something way more beautiful can come from that than constantly pulling back to the fantasy.
Perfect.
Love it.
Perfect. That's a great way to end it. Leanne, Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to hop on and chit chat with us. This has been very insightful. Kyle, any final words?
Yeah, Leanne, how do people get a hold of you? So Leanne's a therapist based out of Houston. You're obviously licensed in the state of Texas. So if anybody in the state of Texas wants to work with you for individual or couples therapy, I assume they can Google your name. And then you also coach, and what's the difference between coaching and counseling? And I would assume, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but your coaching, you could likely work with anyone in the world, and counseling would likely be limited to only the states that you're licensed in, which as far as I know is Texas. But
Yep.
I don't know, speak to that a little bit, because I want, if anybody, I think anybody in the country or world could be listening to this podcast and go, oh my gosh, like I appreciated what she said about that. I'd like to reach out to her. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, my website, leannepeterson.com, is the best place to find me. And exactly what you said, I offer therapy and coaching. Coaching is just a bit more contained. How I do my coaching is 10 sessions. We kind of hit all the things, the pain points, get the system refined. Therapy, how I look at it is my therapy and coaching are both the same, very solution focused, very directive. We're moving you from here to where you want to be. Coaching is just more of the contained container for that. We have 10 sessions. We're going to knock this out. We're going to stay really focused. Therapy can go on longer, and we can get into different things as we go on that journey together.
I like that. Wonderful. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Leanne. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
You bet.